Hello, students. My contemporaries and I have analyzed a series of sources talking about immigration in the United States. We used linkage institutions to talk about these issues. Linkage institutions are the connections between citizens and their government. This can exist in many different forms, like media, politicians, and interest groups. You will hear from a mix of conservative and liberal sources. Enjoy!
Hello students, today I'm going to be talking about a specific interest group. An interest group is an organization that tries to influence a government based on the policies that they hold dear. The interest group that I will be talking about is called FAIR, or Federation for American Immigration Reform. This organization wishes to tighten border security between the Mexican and American border in order to restrict Central Americans from traveling into the United States illegally. They would also like to deport any remaining illegal immigrants in the United States, as well as children of illegal immigrants in the United States. Now, I can already tell that this is a conservative interest group. The reason why is because the majority of conservatives come from one demographic, or a Caucasian demographic. Caucasians have usually been in the United States for hundreds of years, or since the Europeans immigrated here. So they probably don't remember what it feels like to be an immigrant in a new country. Whereas liberals have come from a much wider demographic and therefore probably have differing views on immigration. The specific article that I will be talking about deals with the amount of undocumented children who are traveling into Washington, D.C. school districts and how schools are accommodating those students. This article was found on the FAIR website, so we can already tell what kind of audience they are aiming towards. They are aiming towards the audience who are going to read the article. The people who are going to read the article on the website are probably people who are in support of this issue. Like I said a few minutes earlier, the people who are in support of this issue are Caucasian Americans. You can also get, after reading the article through once, their point of view. Their point of view is one out of fear. They are fearful of the new wave of change that immigrants are bringing into this country. This is demonstrated in their word choice that they use to describe the mass amounts of undocumented children that are traveling into the country. They describe them as unaccompanied alien immigrants. The word alien has an extremely negative connotation. In fact, it dehumanizes them, making them seem like a lesser being. By using this word, they demonstrate their conservative bias and their hate towards immigrants. They also use other word choices that categorize Americans. They describe Americans as English speakers and assume that all Americans speak proficient English, while all immigrants are non-English speakers. This is a huge generalization that we know not to be true. Even going to Summit, there are many students who are Americans whose first language was indeed not English. However, they use this to target their audience. Most Caucasian Americans speak English, and by using this word choice, the readers will now assume that Americans who do not speak English are immigrants. By using these word choices, they demonstrate their fear towards the new wave of immigrants, but also their biases. This article argues that a mass amount of undocumented and foreign-born students have gone into the public school systems. These school systems then have to spend funding on making English proficiency programs for these students. The article states that there are 100,000 of these students in the public DC school system currently. However, after doing some quick fact-checking, I found that this number was significantly lower, at 1,100. This weakens their overall argument because there are not the thousands of undocumented students in the school system that they say. This also puts into question how reliable their facts are in the other arguments that they use. They also make more generalizations, arguing that because they're spending so much money on language proficiency programs, that the quality of education for English proficient students is lessened. However, this isn't based on any evidence, and the evidence that was used was not correct. And it also reveals their bias towards immigration that favors Caucasian Americans. Overall, it weakens their argument. I disagree with the arguments that are presented in this article. I believe that we should grant citizenships to the illegal immigrants in this country and the undocumented students in the Washington, D.C. school districts. I believe that in politics, it's important that people have different opinions on issues. However, I think the fair organization and this fair article will cause many people to fear illegal immigrants. Historically, when people begin to fear a new wave of immigrants, they tend to discriminate towards them. I believe that this fair article has the capability to cause mass discrimination and hate towards illegal immigrants or people who look like illegal immigrants.
Hello, my name is Alejandro, and I had the opportunity to analyze U.S. Congresswoman Barbara Lee and her point of view on immigration. The political ideology of Barbara Lee is liberal. Evidence to support why I believe that Barbara Lee is liberal is because she fights for social and economic justice, international peace, and civil and human rights. Barbara Lee's point of view on immigration is that immigrants who have immigrated here to the United States and have remained here for many years should be granted a path to citizenship because they contribute to society as well as the economy. Several of the word choices that the source uses impacts the meaning of the text and the tone of the text, as well as reveals the point of view. For example, Barbara Lee makes sure that she makes immigrants look great and beneficial to the United States. She does this by describing immigrants as hardworking and bright. By saying this, she is convincing the audience that immigrants are essential and a valuable part of America. Furthermore, Barbara Lee attempts to use one of the three modes of persuasion, pathos. She uses pathos by emphasizing that the federal immigration and customs enforcement agencies' policies cause the separation of families. This persuades the audience to support immigrants because if they were to oppose, they would be supporting the separation of families. Additionally, this source exhibits bias because Barbara Lee was born in California, a Democrat state. But she also has been living the majority of her life in the Bay Area, which is known for having a very liberal environment. Moreover, she descended from people from Sierra Leone and Africa. Since she is a product of immigrant parents or grandparents, she favors immigrants because of her family and how she was raised. Barbara Lee strongly insists that immigrants should be given a path to citizenship as contributors to the United States society and economy. The Congresswoman provides evidence that immigrants are very beneficial to the United States because of the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, and Immigration Modernization Act. Barbara Lee says that this legislation would create jobs, bringing millions of hardworking families out of the shadows and reduce deficit by $900 billion in the next 2 decades. This strengthens her argument because she uses statistics in order to emphasize the positive impact that immigrants have on the United States, which is obviously good. However, her argument is weakened because she does not address any opposing arguments. No logical fallacies were able to be found in her website because she mostly talks about what she is going to do and what she has done in the past, and doesn't really add many opinions to it, or like personal stories, or she doesn't take many experts' opinions or anything like that. After analyzing Congresswoman Barbara Lee's argument, I have come to agree with her point of view. Though being an immigrant myself makes me a little biased, I still believe that people who have immigrated here and have been living here should be given a path to citizenship. Due to the fact that these immigrants have built families here and have only came to the U.S. to seek a life that their country could not offer them. Having candidates as a linkage institution is very beneficial to the political process. It is very difficult to simply listen to everyone's opinion. but having candidates is efficient because they are able to represent a set of beliefs and a set of morals which can apply to many people in the United States. This makes listening to the people easier because instead of listening to every single person in the United States, we can listen to the ones who represent the biggest beliefs or the biggest set of beliefs. This in turn makes the political process much easier and more efficient.
Bill O'Reilly is a conservative American political commentator and host of The O'Reilly Factor, a news and talk show aired on Fox News. O'Reilly's eponymous TV show is classified as political media, one of the several linkage institutions of the United States. A linkage institution is defined as a structure or organization that links the public to the workings of the central government. The role of media, such as the political talk shows like The O'Reilly Factor, is to both communicate the views of the people to the government and to convey information about the government to the people. In the case of The O'Reilly Factor, namely the latter. I will be analyzing an excerpt from a June 2014 episode of The O'Reilly Factor, in which host Bill O'Reilly discusses his sentiments on the current, at the time, state of immigration reform in the United States. O'Reilly begins the discussion by recounting President Obama's recent, at the time, $4 billion fund to heighten security at the Texas-Mexican border. After briefly recapping Obama's proposition, O'Reilly declares that throwing money at the problem will not work, and that what Obama proposes is not sufficient. To throw money at a problem means to spend resources on fixing an issue, but not devoting any genuine drive or ingenuity to actually solving it. By using the idiom of throwing money at the problem in regard to Obama's border security initiative, O'Reilly characterizes the president's effort as lazy and ineffective. O'Reilly blatantly declares that Obama's initiative, which had not yet been implemented at the time, simply will not work, which is a harshly absolute imposition of his opinion as fact. Bill O'Reilly certainly believes that it won't work, but decides to display his opinion as immutable fact seconds into his oration. Sure, O'Reilly came prepared with facts, but logically, such a conclusive and definite statement about a newly conceived plan, one that had not even yet been implemented, can't be made. In any situation. In this instance, O'Reilly appeals to his authority as long-standing political commentator to persuade his audience that his word is the be-all and end-all when in actuality, his statement is just opinion. O'Reilly cites the opinion of political web journal Talking Points Memo, which he follows with a statement of his own opinion. He says, Mr. Obama just wants the problem to go away. He doesn't really want to solve it. Why? Because his left-wing base doesn't want to solve it. Now, Talking Points Memo is a liberal publication, which makes its criticism of President Obama peculiar. It is unclear whether or not O'Reilly intends to juxtapose the political affiliation of the source with its statement in order to support his claim, or if he is plainly siding with TPM. Also, O'Reilly does not disclose the individual TPM voice behind the statement, which raises questions as to that speaker's specific credentials as well as general context for the statement. A statement, regardless of whom said it, is largely useless without context. Somewhat ironically, being that seconds ago he imposed his own opinion as fact, O'Reilly clearly identifies his statement as an opinion by saying Talking Points believes that Obama just wants the problem to go away, which removes his ability to be a sound piece of factual evidence. Everybody has an opinion. Almost immediately after, the segment cuts to a clip of Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi's recent, again at the time, public statement about immigration, in which she expresses her personal desire to provide asylum for all victims of distressed nations seeking residence in the United States. O'Reilly then criticizes Congresswoman Pelosi's public statement and interprets it as a suggestion of an open border policy, according to him, which would be detrimental to the social economic stability of the United States. What O'Reilly fails to acknowledge is that Pelosi's comments clearly stem from her personal ideological foundation, and that she does not state her wishes for any specific government action. O'Reilly's use of Pelosi's brief, O'Reilly's use of Pelosi's brief, out-of-context opinion as fodder for his economically centered argument is simply not sound. While it could be argued that Pelosi's opinions may be ground for eventual legislation, O'Reilly responds in a muddy and unfair way. O'Reilly expresses little consideration for Pelosi's actual intentions, and even turns it into an attack on Pelosi's character by calling her off-the-chart loopy later for wanting to allow all immigrants refuge. This dialogue is not only slanderous and immature, but is a clear ploy to sway the audience of joining O'Reilly's side, lest they want to agree with a madwoman. Right, Bill? And that's not to say that O'Reilly's discourse is a hailstorm of opinionated whining void of any factual evidence. In fact, O'Reilly goes to great lengths to supplement his claims with facts, using numerical data and statistical figures related to recent immigration phenomena. However, O'Reilly's failure to provide context and citation for the vast majority of his data is somewhat of a detriment to the validity of his argument. He states that the basic immigration problem is centered in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, according to data collected by the Census Bureau and Homeland Security. The Census Bureau and Homeland Security are both government institutions, thus their information is essentially guaranteed to be accurate. However, it is made unclear by O'Reilly whether the following information, which contains immigration statistics to potentially support O'Reilly's claim, is from the same source or not. Almost 3 million immigrants have come to the USA, and 60% of them are illegal. 70% of those immigrants cannot speak English very well. About 50% of them lack a high school education, and that more than 50% of the immigrants from those three countries use at least one major welfare program once they get here. There is no citation explicitly available for any of the statistics O'Reilly mentions, so it's hard to determine whether or not they're accurate. Now, all of the figures seem reasonable to the casual observer, and myself, and by extension any viewer of O'Reilly's show, have no immediate reason to think these numbers are false. They definitely seem within the realm of possibility. O'Reilly's credibility would take a major blow if any of his factual information were proven false, so it's in his best interest to always use accurate numbers. Regardless, his close to non-existent citing of sources leaves his facts with an air of uncertain reliability about them. During my research, I personally was unable to find information in documents by either the Census Bureau or Homeland Security that directly correlates with the information given. Being that this information was allegedly published over a year ago, it should have not been hard to find. O'Reilly's apparent tendency to dispense information but not provide consistent citation, or in many cases not citation at all, hinders the validity of his claims, and by extension, the strength of his overall argument. In conclusion, Bill O'Reilly's discourse is largely one of persuasion, crafted by false authority, theatrical intimidation, and impressive-looking facts. While media as a linkage institution has the job of providing the citizens with political information, it has just as much reach to persuade them, of a political opinion. Upon analysis, it is evident that what O'Reilly is doing is largely that, sharing opinions. The noteworthy twist being that he's disguising them as facts. When the politician's quotes and impressive yet ill-cited statistics fall down, all that is standing is a man behind a camera with strong convictions and a big voice. The flaws in O'Reilly's argument reveal that recent governmental events just serve as a conduit for his persuasion. The legislation, propositions, and statistical figures are props for O'Reilly to communicate his traditionalist views to the gullible public. Thus, although the media is typically credited as a narrator of political happenings for the public's ears, it should not be accepted at face value, especially if it's on Fox News.